As regulations change, as governmental pressure increases, and as customer demand also increases, the EV race is hotting up. We are seeing new electric vehicles all the time. And at the Auto Expo, which concluded last month, Hyundai announced their new flagship EV in India, the IONIQ 5. They already have the Kona, but the IONIQ 5 is based on a new architecture, offers more in terms of range, offers more in terms of space. So how is it like? What do we think of its design? How does it drive? You'll find out everything in this video. Now, if you know your vehicle history in Hyundai's perspective, their first passenger vehicle they sold was a car called the Pony. And the IONIQ's design is a recreation of that. It gets a lot of inspiration from the original Pony. And I have to say, I think it's a stunning looking vehicle. Starting with the matte paint, and you get this black panel at the front, very interesting LED headlights. You also get a very interesting active bumper here. This part, these two flaps are open when the car needs cooling, and they close when it doesn't need cooling for better aerodynamic efficiency. Of course, you also get these stripes across the car, and that's an interesting visual touch. What I really like though are these 20-inch wheels. They look fantastic. They're very complicated design, but they look great. And on EVs, we are seeing larger and larger wheel and tire sizes. This is running a 255 section tire, 20 inches. This gives it a lot of stance. These are very wide, and it makes the car look really butch on the road, really stand nicely. The door handles go flush. They only open when you unlock the car, as you can see here. Work very well, and I think that's a great touch. The sides also work very well. The glass house, black detailing on the wheels, on this pillar here, on the doors. I mean, all of this is really well tied together. You can even see black detailing down below. And while Hyundai calls this an SUV, I think it's more of a hatchback with a very high ride height. Even when loaded, it's got 163 millimeters of ground clearance, which is why probably Hyundai refers to this as an SUV. And on the other hand, it also is a single motor power plant, so it's rear wheel drive only. That's something we'll come back to. Rear wheel drive, lots of power, lots of torque. Well, that could be a lot of fun. I'll tell you more about it when we drive the car. Coming to the back, and I think this is probably my favorite part of the car's design. These unique tail lights with the IONIQ 5 badging, the sharply cut off rear, and again those stripes that you saw at the front and the sides. I think it's a design that's been done very well. It's unique, it looks cutting edge, and yet looks conventional enough that doesn't make you wonder if the car's weird. I would have to say, I think the car looks really cool. But it's even cooler when we get to the inside of the IONIQ 5, so let's find out. With the electric power plant, you also get added practicality. So you get a frunk here where you can store about 50 odd liters of luggage, soft bag or your gym bag or a couple of soft bags of your sports equipment. All that can go in here. Now, when it comes to the actual boot, let's go and have a look at how that is. You get electric tailgate opening, of course. And it's a pretty capacious boot. You get a lot of storage space. In fact, with the second row folded, you get almost 1600 liters of storage space, which is massive. So if you're looking to do a airport run, I think the IONIQ 5 will serve you quite well. Now, the interiors of the IONIQ 5 also bring about a lot of innovation and value addition to typical car interiors. Once you get in, you will not recognize this is a Hyundai interior. This is a clean sheet design, absolutely new. You get a touchscreen panel for your HVAC controls. You get some buttons, and I'm really happy to see we still get a volume knob. You get driving mode on the steering wheel. You get a lot of controls, including the ADAS support. The IONIQ 5 gets level 2 ADAS, which will include automatic braking, lane assist, and a lot other functions which can be very useful. When it comes to design, I think the IONIQ 5's design interior wise is also fantastic. You get this dash which is soft touch, and parts of the dash and parts of the doors use biodegradable materials. Part of the seat construction is done by recycled plastic bottles. So all that is adding on to the automotive system to clean up our environment a lot more. The two screens look very futuristic. They're very high resolution. You get wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's a disappointment. I would have preferred if we could get wireless. You also get an 8-speaker Bose sound system that sounds really good, which is also due to the fact that there is virtually no engine noise. So that enhances the audio a lot. All of this is also, it has the connectivity with the app. You can charge the car, you can check the status of the car, you can check where the nearest charging stations are. All of the functions for ADAS can be turned on, turned off from here. Interestingly, the gear lever, which you see is missing, has been moved here next to the steering wheel. So that what that does is opens up the space. You get a fully flat floor. That's a benefit of having an EV. And you get a console that's movable. You can move it front, you can move it back, and it's a massive space along with the cubby hole here. You get many charging points, and the glove box is particularly a nice piece of design because, as you'll see, it opens up like a drawer and is pretty big. It can store a lot of stuff, so that'll be good for practicality. I quite like the seats. You also get these adjustable leg rests that you can use. Well, you can see it in the driver's seat. You can mount them up. I mean, maybe when you're out camping or you're stuck in traffic, especially for the passenger, you can always recline your seat, put your feet up and get more comfortable. The one fear I have about the interior though is that it's very light in color. It's almost a silverish white. Seats, doors, everything, not the dashboard, but the seats and the doors. And with the doors, you know, you're having to grab the handle every time you close them. I think this is going to get really dirty in our conditions very quickly. So if you're going to look at the IONIQ 5, make sure you have either a dry cleaning guy on standby or you're eager to clean. The steering is also a nice touch. It feels the right size. It feels very nice to touch. I really like the horn pad. It's got this recyclable material feel which feels quite good. Overall, I would say a very handsome design of the interiors. Very plush. It feels nothing like Hyundai. It feels much more upmarket, and I think people are really going to appreciate what the interior offers. The rear seats have an interesting touch. Let me tell you about that. And before I finish, the sunroof that you see here is a fixed glass roof panel. It doesn't open. Only thing you can do is close that. I don't think that's a bad thing, especially in our country where people love to stand out of a sunroof in a moving car, which can be very dangerous. So I don't mind that at all, but yeah, that could be a factor for many of you. But let's get into the rear seat and let me just quickly show you the functions there. I think the rear seat is also a really nice place to be in the IONIQ 5 because of a lot of factors. One, you get dedicated air vents built into the pillars. You also get heated rear seats, not ventilated, heated. So in the winters, that will be useful. You get a sunshade here, and you know, with the practicality that I said earlier, you get a flat floor at the rear. Now, let's say if you want to increase the space in the middle, you can just move the console and you've got full space. You've got chargers. You can also electrically adjust the rear seats. So, for instance, if I want to move my seat forward, and I can manually push my backrest. So yeah, a lot of functionality built in. You can use it for many purposes. You can even control the seats, the rear seats, from buttons dedicated here. And I think given the comfort, given the space, the IONIQ 5's rear seat is a really good place to be if you're chauffeured around. Just overall, the level of features offered, the level of convenience offered, it's something that's really good. It feels really impressive. My only fear, like I said earlier, white interiors, oh boy, they're going to be one major concern to clean every few weeks. But can't complain about anything else in the IONIQ. Let's get onto the road and see how it drives. It's 215 bhp, 350 Nm, and whether it can really do 600 kilometers of range on a single charge. So I've shown you what the exterior and the exterior details of the IONIQ 5 are like. I've also shown you how the interior is and how it feels to be inside. The space. Now it comes to one of the most vital aspects of any car, the driving experience. To give you some technical background, the IONIQ 5 is based on Hyundai's E-GMP modular electric platform. This is a skateboard chassis, has the battery integrated into the floor, and there are two versions of this platform that are used commonly. One is the dual motor all-wheel drive version, but that's not the one that is on the IONIQ 5. What we get is the single motor rear wheel drive version. The rear wheel drive is interesting. It has certain benefits. I'll come to that in a bit. It produces about 215 bhp and about 350 Nm of torque. Now, if you would have seen recent other bigger EVs, they have a lot more power and torque. But to be honest, a car this size, about 1800 odd kilos is what it weighs. That 350 Nm and the 215 bhp is perfectly adequate, which is also reflected in the fact that it does the 0 to 100 sprint in 7.6 seconds, which is pretty honest as fast as you need to be. I mean, it's not a performance car after all. The other aspect of EVs is, of course, range, and this has a 72.6 kilowatt hour battery. What that translates to in the real world, according to me, is around the 400 kilometer mark, as long as you're a constant driver and you don't push the car too much. If you really push, it could probably go down to 350. The ARAI figures, and this is going to be a contentious part in the future. ARAI has certified the IONIQ 5 to be able to do 631 kilometers on a single charge. Even if you hypermile, even if you use the best techniques, overinflate the tires, all that stuff, I think 631 is going to be difficult. I think the figures are over optimistic. 400, maybe 450 if you're a really skillful driver, is what I would expect the IONIQ to do comfortably. We've already spoken about the quality, how the cabin feels really nice. It feels unique. It feels very, very well built, and it's a nice place to be. And the quietness of the electric drivetrain obviously adds to the effect. The music sounds nicer. When we were running, it's quite hot in Goa today, we were running the AC initially. I thought the fans were a bit loud, but fans are not really loud. They're about the same volume that they would be in a normal car. The only difference being that you hear them much more because there's hardly any noise from the powertrain, which you will have in a petrol or diesel or hybrid. All of them will have that noise. That obviously gives us a benefit here, and that adds to the refinement. Coming back to the driving, the IONIQ 5 feels decently fast, that 350 Nm, but it's a very measured power delivery. When you really accelerate like I just did, it doesn't hit you with a wall of torque, but it accelerates quite quickly. 7.6 seconds, like I said earlier, is no slouch. So yeah, I mean, it's a more measured power delivery, but it's quick nevertheless. Don't think that this is a slow car at all. You can do pretty high speeds, and the top speed is limited though. A couple of points of the IONIQ that are not optimal. The suspension feels quite stiff. It has to be, because it has to compensate for the battery weight, so it feels quite stiff. If you're driving on bad roads, you either have to slow down or find better roads to drive on. At the same time, it also has some body roll. So that's one of the aspects. The other, the steering. A lot of Hyundai products now have fantastic steering feel, but the IONIQ 5 is still missing in that matter. The steering doesn't have much feel. In sport mode, you get 3 selectable driving modes: eco, normal, and sport. In sport, it loads up. It's a bit too heavy. In normal, it's fine, but I would like a bit more feel. What is good though is that you get 3 different levels of recharging modes. So you can either let the IONIQ 5 cruise without much battery regeneration, or you can put it into the most aggressive mode and virtually drive it via one pedal, because the braking effect, the brake recuperation effect is so intense that it automatically slows down the car the minute you take your foot off the throttle. So you can play around with that. That's always nice. That's what people love doing with EVs, using the recharging mode. The other aspect of the IONIQ 5 that's impressive, like I said earlier, space, practicality, comfort, all of that is there, but it's still not a very cheap vehicle. Yes, it's much cheaper for its segment. It's much cheaper than the car that it shares as underpinnings with, the Kia EV6. At 46 lakhs though, it has an advantage for itself, is that between the 30-35 lakh mark, which is where the BYD Atto 3 is, and the ZS is a little lesser, to about 60-65 plus, which is where the Volvo XC40 Recharge and the EV6 are. There's a huge 25-30 lakh rupee gap, and the IONIQ 5 sits right in the middle of that gap. The first 500 cars were sold at, or rather booked at, a price of 45 lakhs, and the price has gone up. Now the introductory price is no more, but it's only gone up by a lakh. So at 46 lakhs, I still think the IONIQ 5 offers a lot for the customer who's looking to go green, who's looking to work on their carbon footprint. It gives you a lot of practical range. 400 kilometers is no joke, and I think for most users that would be more than enough. You have high-speed charging capability, so if you have, let's say, access to a 350 kilowatt charger or a 150 kilowatt charger, either 350 will recharge your IONIQ from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes, and on the 150, and this is interesting, 10 to 80 takes 21 minutes. Of course, all of this is dependent on the temperature you are in, on a lot of other factors. Both hot and cold temperatures affect the battery differently. The range that you will get out of every charge is also going to change depending on the temperature and the areas you're in. So taking into account all of these things, I think the IONIQ 5 offers a lot. It looks fantastic, it feels very well built, it's decently quick, it's got pretty good range. It's not cheap though. At 46 lakhs plus insurance and other things, it's a 50 lakh rupee vehicle, but it does offer something that price is not being offered by any other vehicle. I think that's its calling card: the good looks, the total product offering, and the fact that it's priced at a point where the competition is much more expensive. So I think these things work really, really well for the IONIQ 5, and with its practicality, it could be a great EV for you, especially if your major use is urban traffic, urban commuting, because the size is very manageable and it feels quite good to drive. And before I finish, the last thing, when I said it's rear wheel drive, you know, that 350 Nm of torque, that instant torque delivery of an EV and rear wheel drive, well, you can drift the IONIQ 5 quite successfully, quite easily. But its body roll then plays in. You can feel that it's a bit soft to increase comfort, but yeah, you can throw it around and get it to drift very nicely.